Our tutorial today is for the Nawara Onesie. We'll need a few different things to knit this, the first of which being two 50-gram skeins of DK weight yarn. We'll need some US 6 4mm needles and a 16-inch cord, and then a longer cord for magic loop, some stitch markers and a tapestry needle, some scrap yarn both for the sleeves and then for the embroidered flowers on the front of the body. We'll need 3 buttons about 1 centimeter to 1.5 centimeters in diameter, and then optional, you can knit a gauge swatch at 22 stitches by 30 rows. We will start by casting on 53 stitches on our 16-inch circulars using the long tail cast on. So I'm getting my tail of yarn here, making a slip knot, placing it on my needle, and I will cast on 53 stitches. This stitch counts as the first one, so 52 more. I have my 53 stitches cast on. Now I'm going to turn my work. This first row is going to be a wrong side row. We're going to start by purling all of the stitches in this row. I've purled across the wrong side row. I'm turning my work and I'm on the right side now. We're going to start off every right side row with a slip one stitch, and this is just going to keep the edge stitches really nice and clean. So I'm going to slip this first stitch knitwise, so going in this way with the yarn in back here. So I'm just slipping it off the needle. Now what I'm going to do is just knit across this row. So I slipped one and I'm knitting all the way across. I've just finished my right side row, so we're going to continue those 2 rows for 1 inch. So we'll purl across the wrong side, slip 1 at the beginning of the row on the right side, and then we'll knit across the right side. So repeating for 1 inch. I've now knit for 1 inch and I'm back on a right side row, and now we're going to add in the holes for the bow in the back to go through. So we're going to start by slipping that first stitch knitwise with yarn in back. And I'm going to knit 2, yarn over, knit 2 together through the back loop. So I'm going to look at the back of these 2 stitches here, put my needle in through both of them, grab the yarn, and now I've knit 2 together through the back loop. Now I'm going to knit to the last 5 stitches and stop there. I'm at the last 5 stitches. Now I'm going to knit 2 together, just the regular way this time, yarn over, and knit 3. Now that I've added in those 2 holes there, I'm going to continue with my purl row and then my slip 1, knit row until the work measures another 1 inch. So we need 2 inches of knitting here, ending on a right side row once again. I now have 2 inches knit, and we're going to fold this collar together. So I'm going to take my working yarn and I'm going to be knitting the first stitch on the needle with the first cast on stitch down here. All right, so I'm going to put my needle in through my stitch, go in through the 2 legs of this cast on stitch, bring my yarn through, and then bring my yarn through. Now I've knit those together there. All right, the next one, going in through this stitch, finding the next 2 legs here, bringing my yarn through, and again, I'll show you one more time. So we're just finding the next 2 legs each time, matching it with the next stitch. So the next 2 legs are right here, going in, and pulling through. I'm going to do that all the way to the end. My collar is now folded over and you can see this really beautiful neckline. Now we're going to work on setting up our raglan increases on the wrong side row. So we're going to start by purling 10 stitches. Going to take a marker, place it on the needle. Next, I'm going to purl 7 stitches. Place a marker on the needle. Next, I have 19 stitches to purl. Take another stitch marker on the needle. Next, I have another 7 stitches. Take my last marker on the needle, and we have 10 stitches left to purl. I have my 4 stitch markers now on the needle. I'm going to turn so that we're on the right side. And now this is where we start our raglan increases. You'll see that we have the body split up. This is the first half of the back. Then we have the stitches for a sleeve, the stitches for the front, the stitches for another sleeve, and then the second half of the back, which will eventually be joined up. So we're going to start working across the back here. We'll slip our first stitch knitwise with yarn and back. I'm going to knit until 1 stitch before the marker. I'm here at 1 stitch before the marker. I'm going to pick up this bar of yarn between the 2 stitches, place it on the marker, and now I'm going to make one right. So I'm going to put my needle in through that bar of yarn, grab the working yarn, and pull it through. I'm going to knit 1, slip this stitch marker. Now I'm going to make one left. So I'm picking up this bar of yarn. I pass this over the first needle, grab the yarn. I'll show that one more time in a different way. So I place the bar of yarn on the needle, and then you can just go in through the back here and grab the yarn. I usually find that way a little bit more difficult. So I pick up my yarn, I just pass it around the needle like that, and then grab. Either way works just fine for the make one left. All right, so now I'm going to knit again until 1 stitch before the marker. I'm at 1 stitch before the marker. I'm going to place the yarn on the needle this way, loosen it up a bit, make one right, knit 1, slip marker, placing the yarn on the opposite side of the needle to make one left. Knitting to 1 stitch before the marker. Here we are 1 stitch before the marker, make one right. Oh, I picked up some extra yarn there. I'm just going to loosen it up a bit, grab that yarn, knit 1, slip the marker, make one left. So I just pass it around back here, grab the yarn. Make one right, knit 1, slip the marker, make one left, and then knit to the end of the row. So that was our first increase row. At the marker, 1 stitch before, we always make one right, and then right after the marker, we make one left. Make one right, make one left, make one right, make one left. All of the markers are worked. So we do that on every right side row. On the wrong side row, we just turn our work and we purl across the whole row, just slipping the markers. There are no increases. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. I've purled all the stitches and I am turning back to the right side row. So we just completed 2 rows, which equals 1 step. All right, so the right side row with the increases and then the wrong side row just purling equals 1 step of these raglan increases. We need to do row 1 and 2 12 times total. So going on the right side and the wrong side, that's 1. Right side, wrong side, 2. Right side, wrong side, 3, all the way up to 12. You've already done those 2 rows 1 time, so that means you only have 11 more to do. All right, so we need to go across the right side and the wrong side 11 more times. We only increase on the right side and then we purl across the wrong side. So go ahead and do those 11 more times and we'll meet back up there. I've now completed row 1 and row 2 of my raglan increases 12 times, so we're ready to join in the round and put the sleeve stitches on hold. So I'm going to take my work and put my needles together as such, spreading out my stitches along the needles. I'm going to knit into this first stitch on the left hand needle, so now it ends up on the right needle. I'm then going to take this next stitch on the right needle and pass it over top of that stitch we just knit. So now we're joined in the round. Next, I'm going to knit to the first marker. At the first marker, I'm going to remove it from the needle, and then I'm going to take some scrap yarn that I've placed on a tapestry needle, and I'm going to put these 31 sleeve stitches on hold. Removing the next marker, and I'm just going to tie a bow here. I'm now going to cast on 5 new stitches using the backwards loop method. Continue knitting across the front 43 stitches. I'm at the next sleeve marker. I'm going to remove it and place these 31 sleeve stitches on hold like the other side. Once again, I'm going to cast on 5 new stitches using the backwards loop method. I'm now going to knit 21 stitches. After I've knit 21 stitches, I'm going to place a marker, and this is our new beginning of round marker. So after I've placed this beginning of round marker, we're going to continue knitting until our work measures 6 inches from the underarm. So you can measure from right here, measuring 6 inches, and we'll stop at the beginning of round marker and we'll get ready for our German short rows. My work is now measuring 6 inches from the underarm, and I'm just about to be back at the beginning of round marker, so we are ready to start our German short rows. We're first going to knit 12 stitches from the beginning of round marker. I've knit 12 stitches. Now I'm going to turn my work. I am going to take this final stitch that I have knit and slip it over to the right hand needle. Now I'm going to pull this yarn up so that I'm seeing 2 legs of the stitch here, and I'm going to continue pulling it all the way back down so I'm ready to purl. Next, I'm going to purl back to the beginning of round marker, slipping my marker, and now I'm going to purl 12 stitches. I've purled 12 stitches and I'm turning my work once again, so now that I'm on the right side. I'm going to bring my yarn in front here, and then once again slip this first stitch and pull up. So now I'm seeing 2 legs of the stitch again, and I'm going to keep my yarn in the back this time. Now I'm going to knit to the beginning of round marker. I'm going to continue knitting past the beginning of round marker until 3 stitches after our double stitch here, the one that we use to turn our work. So I'm slipping my marker. Here's that double stitch. I'm just going to knit this stitch as if it was a normal stitch. And now I'm knitting 3 more stitches. 1, 2, 3. Next, I'm going to turn my work. I'm on the wrong side now, and I'm going to slip this stitch here, pass the yarn up and back down. So purling back to the beginning of round marker, slipping the marker. Now I'm going to purl to 3 stitches past the double stitch. Again, I'm just purling this double stitch as if it was a normal stitch. So I've purled that. Now I'm purling 3 more and turning my work. All right, so repeating that process again, I'm going to bring my yarn in front, slip this stitch, pull up and back so I can see the 2 legs of the stitch here, knitting to the beginning of round, slipping the marker. Once again, I'm going to knit to 3 stitches past the double stitch. Turning my work, slipping this first stitch, pulling up and down, purling back to the beginning of round, slipping the marker, purling to 3 stitches past the double stitch, turning my work, going to slip this stitch for the final time, pulling around and back. So I've just created my final double stitch over on this side. I now have 3 that I've made here and 3 that I've made over here. As I knit to the right side this time and knit over this double stitch, I'm not going to turn my work. We're done working our German short rows. So we're just going to keep knitting in the round now. When you come to this double stitch on the right side this time, just knit through it like a normal stitch. We're going to keep knitting in the round until our work measures now 7 inches from the underarm. Make sure you're not measuring at a place where we've added these German short rows, because your knitting is longer in the back now to make room for the diaper. All right, so you're measuring still from the front side of the underarm where the stitches are even with the front and not longer in the back. All right, so go ahead and keep knitting in the round now until your work measures 7 inches. Just coming to the beginning of round marker here, and we are ready to separate for the front and back. The first thing we're going to do is knit 24 stitches. Now that I've knit 24 stitches from the beginning of round, I'm going to bind off 14 stitches. Just bringing one stitch over top of another. So there's 1, 2, 3, all the way to 14. Next, we need 34 stitches on our right hand needle. We already have 1, so we need to knit 33 more. I've knit 33 stitches, so I have 34 over on my right hand needle. Next, we're going to place these back 48 stitches on hold. So I'm taking some scrap yarn and a tapestry needle, and I'm placing all of these stitches back here on hold. When you get to the beginning of round marker, you can just remove it and continue placing the stitches on hold. Now that I've placed my stitches on hold, we're just going to be focusing on what is the front here. All right, so our working yarn is over on this side. So I'm pushing my stitches back up onto the needle. And right here, we're going to start by binding off 14 stitches, purlwise. So I'm going to purl the first stitch, purl the second stitch, pass this stitch over top, and there's 1, 2, 3, all the way to 14. I've cast off 14 stitches on the purl side now, and I have 1 stitch on my right hand needle and 19 over on my left hand needle. I'm now going to continue purling across the 19 stitches on the left hand needle. Turning my work, and we're now going to be working down this front section here. So for this first row, I'm going to knit 1, knit 2 through the back loop, knit to the last 3 stitches, knit 2 together, and knit 1. I'm now turning my work, and I'm now just going to purl across the wrong side. Now that I'm back on the right side, we're going to start a 2-step repeat, and all that is you knit across row 1, which is the right side, and purl across row 2, which is the wrong side. We're going to do that 9 times. All right, so right side, wrong side, 1, right side, wrong side, 2, right side, wrong side, 3, all the way up to 9 times. I've knit back and forth 9 times, and we're ready to add the buttonholes. So I'm going to start with a knit 1, knit 2 through the back loop, yarn over, knit 6, yarn over, knit 6, yarn over, knit 2 together, knit 1, and we've added 3 buttonholes. I'm going to turn my work, purl across the wrong side one more time, turning my work once again, and we're ready to bind off. So we're just going to do a regular bind off for all of these stitches on the needle. So passing one over top of the other all the way across. We're now ready to place the back 48 stitches onto the needle again. So I'm just slipping the stitches one by one. You can break the yarn and pull it out there. We're going to start by attaching our ball of yarn on the right side. So we'll slide these stitches back up, grab some working yarn, and we're just going to knit right across the right side. I noticed that I dropped a stitch when I was putting them back on the needles, and I'll show you how to fix this in case you ever come across it. You can do this with a crochet hook as well, but I often don't have one on hand, so this is easier for me. I'm just going to pick my stitch up, put it on the right hand needle, look for the first bar in line here. We have 2 that it fell off from. I'm just going to take that stitch and pass it over top of that bar of yarn, just like we would if we were binding off. And take the next bar, pass this stitch over, and then we can put it back on the needle and continue knitting. So don't worry if you ever lose a stitch, you can easily put it back on. I've turned to the wrong side and now I'm just purling across this row. So we've knit across the right side, purled across the wrong side. I'm back on the right side and we're ready to start our decreases. So we're going to start with knit 1, knit 2 through the back loop, knit to the last 3 stitches. At the last 3 stitches, we're just going to knit 2 together, knit 1, turn our work, and on the wrong side, we're just going to purl all the way across the row. Back on the right side, we're just going to repeat those 2 steps. So knit 1, knit 2 together through the back loop, knit to the last 3 stitches, knit 2 together the regular way, knit 1, and then on the other side, purling all the way across. We're going to repeat those until we have 18 stitches left on the needle. I'm back on the right side with 18 stitches on my needle. For these last 2 rows, we're just going to knit across the right side, purl across the wrong side. After I've knit across the right side, purled across the wrong side, I'm just going to bind off these 18 stitches. Knitting into the first stitch and the second stitch and passing each stitch over as we go. All right, we've worked to the front piece and then the back piece, and we're ready to add our I-cord all the way around. So we're going to start at the back. I'm going to take my working yarn and my needle and start at the back right corner here. We're going to be picking up approximately 1 stitch for every stitch. So you can see, for instance, here's a leg of a stitch, here. So we're aiming to pick up every single stitch all the way around. So I'm going in through, let's start right at the beginning here, pulling the yarn through, keeping a good tail there, just looking for the next stitch here. One by one, finding the next stitch, Grabbing the yarn and pulling it through. So I'm just picking up stitches one by one all the way around the whole thing. All of the stitches have been picked up all the way around, and we're back at that back right side where we started. We're now going to get ready for our I-cord bind off. So I'm going to start here and cast on 3 extra stitches. Remember that first stitch is a live tail, so it might come loose. So there's 1, 2, 3. All right, so we have 3 new stitches cast on. And next we're going to knit into the first stitch, knit into the second stitch, and then knit into the next 2 stitches through the back loop. All right, I'm just going to give that tail another tug, make sure everything's nice and tight there. All right, and then I'm going to slip those 3 stitches back to the left-hand needle. Again, I'm going to knit into the first stitch, knit into the second stitch, knit the next 2 stitches through the back loop, and slide those 3 stitches back over. I'll show you one more time here because we're just going to complete that all the way around. Hope you find a nice show to watch because this takes a couple minutes. So knit into the first 2, knit those next 2 together, and slide everything back. All right, so continue that all the way around until you have 3 stitches left on the needle, and I'll show you how to bind these off. At the last 3 stitches here, I'm going to break my yarn, give myself a bit of a tail, and thread it through a tapestry needle. We're now going to shift those 3 stitches over like this and get ready to join these last 3 stitches with the first 3 stitches. So the first thing we're going to do is just take this stitch off of the needle. I'm going to look for the first stitch over on this side, grab it, and pull it together with the stitch I just dropped off the needle. Next, I'm going to look for that stitch that we dropped off the needle, pick up the leg of it once more, and join it with this stitch by slipping it off the needle. I'm next going to look for the second V here, which is this stitch, and pull that together. Once again, we're looking for the stitch we just dropped off the needle, which is right here. You can see that yarn running through it, grabbing it, joining it with our final stitch here, pulling that through and looking for the first V, which is right here. Right, then we can bring everything together. And I'm just going to send this yarn over to the back, and we can weave in the end once we're finished. So we finished our I-cord, everything's looking great. Eventually this will be folded up and we'll have buttons coming through here. But for now we're going to get ready to pick up stitches for the sleeves. Next we're going to be picking up our sleeve stitches, so I'm going to take my needles with the longer cord now. Going to pick up each stitch that has been put to rest on the scrap yarn, one by one. Now just going to break my scrap yarn, and we're going to separate the stitches onto each needle. So we have 31 stitches, which means we're going to have 15 stitches on the first needle and 16 on the second. Pull the cord through. And spread the stitches out along the needles. We're now looking at the stitches at the underarm. This is where we cast on our 5 extra stitches. Going to pull out my back needle, take my working yarn here, and we're going to start by picking up 3 of these stitches at the underarm. So you can see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to focus on the first 3. So I'm going in through this middle stitch here, going to grab my yarn and pull through. Here's the next stitch, grabbing the yarn, and the third stitch. All right, I'm going to pick up one more stitch to close up the underarm hole a little bit. And now we're going to knit across those 15 stitches. I'm now turning my work, going to slide needle 2 stitches, pull needle 1 stitches off, and start knitting across these 16 stitches on needle 2. Once again, I'm looking for the bar here. I'm going to pick this up, knit it through the back loop, and now I'm looking for those last 2 stitches at the underarm. Here is the first one, and here is the second one. We can turn our work again, pull needle 1 stitches up onto the needle, and pull needle 2 stitches back off. All right, so now we're going to knit across needle 1, turning our work again, pulling needle 2 stitches back up, pulling needle 1 stitches off, and knitting across needle 2, turning once again. So we're just going to continue like that, knitting across needle 1, turning, working across needle 2 until our work measures 1 inch from the underarm here. All right, so continue knitting for 1 inch. I've knit for 1 inch and we're ready to start the I-cord bind off. So just like we did at the leg openings, we're going to create 3 extra stitches here. All right, so I've cast on 3 new stitches, and I'm going to knit into the first one, knit into the second one, and I'm going to knit the next 2 together through the back loop. I'm going to slide all 3 of these back to the left-hand needle and repeat. Knit into the first stitch, second stitch, and the next 2 stitches through the back loop, and slide back to the needle. We're just going to repeat that all the way around until we have 3 stitches left on the needle. At the last 3 stitches here, I've broken my yarn and added a tapestry needle. We're going to slip the first stitch off, look for the first V in back here, going back in through the leg of the stitch that I dropped off the needle, and joining it with the next stitch on the needle, looking for the second V, grabbing this leg of the stitch and the final stitch on the needle, joining that with the first V over here. All right, so we've joined our I-cord in the round here. I'm just going to bring the yarn through to the back, and then we'll weave in the end later. Once this sleeve is finished, we're going to knit the second sleeve the exact same way. So you can just rewind the video and follow along just like you did for the first sleeve. And then we'll get ready to do some finishing touches, add our I-cord bow, and add the buttons onto the bottom. For the I-cord bow, I'm going to cast on 2 stitches. So creating my slip knot, placing it on the needle. So that already counts as 1 stitch. I just need 1 more. There's 2. So what I'm going to do now, instead of turning my work, I'm just going to slide these 2 stitches to the other needle. I'm going to knit these 2 stitches. Again, not turning my work, just going to slide them down, and again, knit 2, slide them across the needle, and knit 2. All right, so this is a really simple process. You just continue sliding and knitting all the way until this I-cord measures 17.5 inches. At 17.5 inches, we will bind off the I-cord, and I'll show you how to do that. I have 17.5 inches of my I-cord knit here, and we're going to bind off these 2 stitches. So I'm just going to knit the first one, knit the second one, then I'm going to pass the first stitch over top of that one, break my yarn, and I'm going to pull the yarn through that final stitch and pull tight. Now we can go ahead and just weave the end into the I-cord. Just pass it down a centimeter or 2, pull through, and then you can just snip this end with your scissors and do the same thing to the other side. We are at the final few steps in order to finish this onesie. Next, I've started attaching the buttons to the bottom flap here. I'm going to show you how I've done that. You're taking your tapestry needle and a piece of scrap yarn in the matching color to what you've knit in. Just going to place the button here evenly. Remember, we have 3 buttonholes on the front. I'm going to place my tapestry needle in through the first hole and then down through the second. Sometimes you can get it through a second time. I'm not sure on these buttons if that'll work. Oh, I got it through. All right, so it'll always secure it a little bit more if you can go over that once more. I'm just going to tie a knot here, just snipping the ends here, and then we'll be able to place all of our buttons through the holes. All right, next we'll have some ends to weave in. I've done most of them, but I've left one at the underarm here. Again, just going to thread it through the tapestry needle. And I'm going to go in through the top half of 3 of these purl bumps. So I'm going in through this one, the next one, and a third one, pulling my yarn through. And I'm going to go now back up through 3 purl bumps. And last time, back down through 3. And snipping my end. We're ready to attach the I-cord at the back. For this, it's important to note that even though there's space all around the neck, we wouldn't want to put this cord all around the neck because that would give us the ability to tighten the neckline as much as possible, which would not be safe. So that's why we've created these yarn overs here to create holes for the bow to go through. I'm just going to put it in through the first one, and in through the second one. Make sure it's even here. All right, you'll see as I tighten, there's actually no way to tighten the neck past here. So it's always going to keep a safe opening for the neck, even if the bow gets pulled too tight. All right, so we're just going to whip this around here. And there's our bow. Super cute detail at the back. If you're going for a different style, you can always just add a button to the back here and then put that through the hole. It's up to you. So you can do different variations on this as well. Before we get into the embroidery, I just wanted to show you the finished result here. Now you can follow along with what I do and try and get these flowers here, or there's many different tutorials on YouTube for different ways to embroider flowers. This is just what I find the simplest and the most fun to do, and I really like the beautiful result it creates. But again, just have fun, be creative, and don't stress too much. If you feel like it's looking funny at the beginning or whatnot, the more flowers you add in, you're not going to notice at the end. All right, so I'll show you how I achieved this look, but again, just have fun with it and don't stress. I'm going to start with the color I'd like to use for the branches, and I'm going to undo the buttons again. so that we can work in between the fabric here. So you can just estimate where you'd like it to start. I start just a little bit over and down from the underarm there. And make sure you leave a little bit of a tail at the end here so that you can weave in your work. Or if you'd like to tie a knot, there's different ways to attach embroidery. All right, so I've just gone in through here, and now I'm going to come back up right beside this stitch, making sure not to pull too tight. We don't want to cinch in the fabric. And then I'm going to go back down here. Just continuing that, so up beside the stitch and back down. And that should be good. If we want to add more length to this branch, we can do that after. So if you'd like your flowers to extend either way, this isn't set in stone. You can always add more length. There's no perfect way to do this, just wherever you feel like looks nice. All right, before moving on here, I'm actually going to weave in the ends on the inside. I find if I don't do that, when I start adding in the flowers, things will get really tangled very quickly. So the same way as I weave in the ends on the body and sleeves, just going in through some purl bumps. So remember, we have two ends. We have where we started as well. We're ready to add in the flowers now. Taking some more scrap yarn, whatever I have available. You can even embroider in the exact same color we used for the rest of the onesie, and that would be really beautiful. I've seen just that single color embroidery lots of times, and it looks great. All right, so we're going to start on the flowers. I'm just going to start right around here for the first petal. Again, making sure I leave a tail. I'm going to go about 3 stitches up. Bring my needle through. I'm going to go back in through the bottom once again. And in through the top. Again, there's a lot of different ways to do flowers. You can do lazy daisies if they feel easier to you. I just prefer this way. There are many different techniques. All right, I'm going to go back in through this center point here. Again, looking about 3 stitches away. There's our first flower. I'm going to add one in just a little bit to the side. I've come to the end of my yarn here, so before adding in more flowers, again, I'm just making sure that I weave in these ends so that things don't end up getting tangled. As we go up, I'm just adding in some smaller flowers and partial petals as well. You can just kind of fill them in as you feel like is needed. After making it up to the top with my flowers, I'm going back down now and just filling it out where I feel like we need some more volume. I'm definitely going to fill in pieces through here where you can see too much of the branch, and then I'd like it a little bit fuller at the bottom. So I worked up just some smaller flowers at the top, and now I'm working down, filling in some spaces. Once you're feeling good about the first side, you can move on to the second side the exact same way, so just building bigger flowers at the bottom and tapering off to some partial flowers or petals at the top. I'm all finished weaving in my ends, and I'm just going to attach the buttons once again. Great work for making it through all of those flowers. I know it's time consuming, but it just makes this such a timeless piece. I think it would be beautiful just hung up in a nursery, and you can keep it as decoration for years and years. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please give this video a thumbs up, and you can contact me for any pattern support at kaburaknits@gmail.com, and you can also find me on Instagram and Ravelry as Kabura Knits. Thanks so much for following along. Happy knitting!